So I'd like to thank you guys again for meeting us all here. I'd like to start off by just reminding you what this is about. This is going to be based around the school levy. And what we're going to be talking about is trying to get different perspectives on what you guys see through your own eyes. So trying to see a view through everyone's different perspective. So I'd like to start off just as an all-around question. How, in your opinion, will this affect the community personally? If anyone can answer that.
Well, I'm Sarah Grace Bouquois. I am going to be the upcoming ASB president. I personally think that this will affect the community in a very strong way, just because I feel like without a good student body, then the community will probably I feel like it will either, fade away, or it will just become lackluster is maybe the word I'm looking for. I'm not exactly sure.
How much do you think the community feeds off of our school? Not necessarily just in sports in general, but maybe academics or trying to get people hired into new jobs, stuff like that. Does anyone know? Like specifically maybe businesses. I know A&J has a little bit of a shrine built up for our sports programs, football, basketball. They have jerseys up there, they have trophies. I know a lot of businesses will come out and they'll sponsor our programs. What possibly could be affected by this if the levy passes or if it does not pass?
I think that small businesses gain a lot from having a large, not a large student body per se, but from having a student body in the area. Say like Gotta Have a Java, most people that go there generally are people from the student body and they go there every day. So small businesses may dwindle due to not having a student body around that can make most of their income for them.
I think it's also going to affect the workforce. So if students aren't in the community to work, like A&J employs 52 people at their business, and a good portion of those are high school students and returning college students.
Right, yeah, I know a lot of businesses, especially the local businesses here, will try to work around and hire students to work around their schedules, whether it be in sports or in academics. For the record, I'm curious, is there anyone who can share, if anyone knows exactly which teachers were put on RIF, and if that's able to be shared?
On our school district website, under the last 2 months of school board meetings, there are 2 resolutions that talk about the positions that were RIFed. It would be up to individual teachers to identify that they have been impacted.
Could you tell me how many people have been put on RIF? Not necessarily names, just numbers.
I don't have the number in my head specifically. I would say we're between 12 and 15 positions, teachers and classified.
How does that follow in with like a possible budget cut? What would that help with? How much? I guess to reword that question, what percentage of the budget cut do you think this might help?
I didn't bring the figures with me. Sorry. I will get that back to you.
Can anyone share with me if the levy passes? I know we don't do a lot of field trips or just activities as a class in general, but what would possibly happen if we don't have the available funds to do this next year?
Personally, to me, I've actually only been here for about a year and a half because I move around a lot, so I've seen a lot of schools. And personally, to me, this school is probably my favorite, only because having a school like this with such a great community around it to support it, and just a small community, close members and everything like that, people are gathered during things like sporting events or Knowledge Bowl, or when something tragic happens, everyone comes together. I feel like what's most affected by not having those kinds of funds would just be our connection with each other, basically.
My next question would be, this would go more specifically to Mr. Randall over there. What, as you've told me before, you're kind of a little bit in charge of the security at the school. I don't know if that's exactly what your title would be, but what plans, if at all, did you have for helping to increase the security at the school for next year? And will this be cut back due to lack of funding?
So Joe Randall, principal at middle school, high school. I don't know if I formally listed out plans to up security per se, but I know one very important piece is our fire alarms are not connected from the buildings, which to me is a big issue, and that is probably going to go on hold. Upgrading and adding some cameras to some places that we don't have right now, that would be something that I'd look at. Getting some better PA systems, like to the outside, and so people outside or in the shop area can hear what's going on in case of emergencies. But all those things haven't been worked on yet for a few years, and I'm sure that they would not go forward.
Was this something you're planning on fixing in the future?
It's something I would propose to the district, and then the district maintenance crew, they prioritize that kind of stuff. Okay. Put it in.
So how exactly, of the plans that you just mentioned, how many of them would you want to try to propose to the board now?
All of them. I mean, safety is number one, and there's
even if it wasn't able to go through.
So you're saying I can propose it, and then, like I said, the maintenance and the school board and district office will prioritize and see where they fall.
Right.
For the whole district wide.
Okay.
I would like to redirect the attention towards, I guess this is probably going to be one of the bigger topics, would be sports. I realize that without the lack of funding, sports could take a major hit from this. My first question would be, is it possible for the school to go towards out-of-state like sponsors from states like maybe Oregon, or really maybe not out-of-state, but maybe in farther parts of Washington, to try and get bigger businesses to help support and see if we can get a sponsor out of them? Does anyone know if that'd be like a possibility, or is it just not something that can happen?
Right now, I'm trying to think outside the box. So nothing is off the table right now. Whether the legalities and all of those things, those have not been discussed with the school board yet.
Is it possible that you could disclose, if you do know right now, which sports would possibly take the biggest budget cut?
If the levy does not pass?
Yes.
Correct.
If the levy does not pass, we will not have athletics funded by the school district.
So,
per se, at this point.
Per se. Okay. So does that mean that necessarily sports isn't off the table? It would just require maybe more of like a bigger, like, I guess if anyone knows what like Pop Warner is, what they do is they'll fundraise their own sports, kind of like almost like a business in a sense. Would it require maybe like bigger fees for parents and students to come and join the play, or more fundraisers? Would that be an option?
Those are certainly options that are available out there, but you also have what they call Title IX, which is equity across the board for both male and female athletes.
Right.
And so you have that issue that you have to make sure that you are in compliance with as well.
Could you explain to me
that will affect your federal funding levels.
Could you explain to me what Title IX is?
Title IX is the equity of opportunities available for both female and male students. So you can't have boys basketball team and not have something available to the girls sometime during the school year. They have to be an equitable opportunity for both genders.
So does that go for just one sport per season, or would that be more than one?
It goes across the board throughout the entire year.
Okay.
I would like to add something. I'm Becky Harmoning, and I am the journalism advisor at the high school. If the levy does not pass, And if there are no sports, there will really not be any need for a yearbook, because that is a big portion of what is covered. So it's kind of the fallout from this is wide reaching, that maybe hasn't been really thought about. So it's just something I want to put out there for thought.
If it's not going to be needed because of sports, would that cut it out completely, or would there still be a yearbook just dedicated to students and academics?
That would be a possibility. It might be that a softbound book that would be more of a identifier book of each person, and then we could cover the activities that are continuing, but we probably wouldn't stay with the current format.
Suze Clark Bennett, also from the high school. Extracurriculars are not just sports. I want to clarify that. It also includes our mini clubs, Knowledge Bowl, our theater program, music. I mean, it's very outreaching. It's not just sport driven.
Youth and government.
Sarah Grace Bois, senior, soon to be senior ASB president. I was in theater. I was in the theater production for this year. And personally, it was probably the most fun I've ever had this year. And not having something available to students like me or students like the other kids who joined the theater for that passion, it's probably just as painful as taking sports away from somebody who loves sports. Because we don't let our creativeness, we don't let it out through tackling somebody on a football field or swiping a ball away during a play in basketball. That's not how we live our life. We like to sing and dance and be nerds, and it's really fun for us. So taking that away is like taking our creativity away, and it's painful to think about.
What do you think a possible...
Can I follow up? Ben Rader, substitute teacher. I've heard it said that the extracurriculars don't serve a career function, and that's patently untrue. There are studies that prove all the things we just listed, sports, theater, etc., have an impact on what you go on to do later. And I can say personally, and I'll use the example of theater, I was in theater when I was a student here in 2001, 2002, and I was a terrible actor, and I've never had to be a career actor or apply for that job. That being said, I learned things in theater, like attacking the fricatives, to enunciate, to look people square in the eye, that have helped me immensely as a professional, just in the course of conversation. Doesn't matter who I'm talking to. So there's a litany of examples that can be used through that, not just with theater. It goes to art, it goes to every single sport. And so there are multiple benefits to having these programs here, and they become so far-reaching that you can't really say that there's a cap on their potential.
Do you think that extracurriculars such as theater or band, do you think that those have the same amount of potential to enlighten a student's vision for where he or she wants to go in the near future, such as the same potential, like as we've put in perspective of English or math or science, possibly open up more career paths? Do you think those have the same potential?
Well, around the entire country, there are things like band scholarships that go so unnoticed by so many people, and they help get so many kids like our band nerds, and I love them, that's why I'm calling them band nerds. They help get so many people through college because they're passionate about playing an instrument, and it goes beyond just playing an instrument. It applies to their everyday life. Playing instruments has a study of, if you play an instrument, it can help your mental growth and your mental capacity. There's so much more to doing an extracurricular that is artistic than everybody thinks there is. We're not just doing it because we think it's fun, we're doing it because we love it.
So I was at a group discussion last week, and there were business people there, and they use the words soft skills, and those are the kind of things that you get in the non-core classes, in your acting, in your sports, that employers are looking for, that are just as important as the academics.
Could you describe to me what a soft skill is?
It would be how to converse with people, how to act in front of, at a workplace,
Communication
skills, which is not coming through right now.
Time management.
Organization.
How to learn, just how to, to take criticism from a boss.
So things like learning the difference between basic criticism or constructive criticism, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Being on time.
So do clubs, as I've heard, do clubs fall in the line with the financial budget cut? Or would they be something completely different that could possibly stay?
Clubs fall under the ASB blanket, and most advisors who have a club are compensated with a financial stipend for their time that they spend with the students. So it is my understanding that it would also fall under that extracurricular cuts. And this is nothing new, folks. We've been making budget cuts for the last 6 years. It's just now we're trying to protect our reserves. And so things are getting serious.
What is, if I may ask, the best case scenario that could possibly happen the levy does not pass? It's sort of like, if you guys have any sort of contingency plan laid out yet, that's able to be shared.
Well, we are only allowed to run a levy twice in a calendar year. So it would not be until the February election that we could run another levy. And every time you run a levy, if you're running it by yourself, and Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, it costs between $20,000 and $30,000 to run that levy, to go through the election process. So when this levy passes August 1st, our troubles will be less.
How long?
So I'd like to follow up on that. The levy funds come to a school district from January to December on the property tax cycle. A school district's budget goes from July is when it begins. So the current budget we are writing for the 2017-18 school year has to be written without levy funds because we won't have information until August 2nd or later. If the levy fails, as CB said, we will run it again in 2018. However, we will lose an entire year of collecting funds. We will not begin to collect funds until January 2019.
Does anyone believe that this would be a time where we could see local businesses like the Skamania Lodge or A&J or the Little Viking step up possibly and really show more of their true colors and maybe give us a little bit more funding as kind of like more a plea to try and keep us going, I guess?
Most of the businesses in our community support us in one way or another. I think the easiest thing that everybody can do is go out and vote. And if you aren't registered to vote, visit the Secretary of State's webpage through accesslaw.gov and get yourself registered if you're 18 or older. And if you're not, then encourage people to get out there and vote and help support us in that way. That's going to be the easiest fix.
And personally, for somebody like me, I'm only 17 years old, and I still have a whole year of high school left. I have my whole senior year, which is the most important year when we're leaving on to become adults and to become people of the community. And for me, I can't vote. So not having that support from people, it just feels like kind of a letdown, I feel like is a word I could use, or I'm not sure exactly, but definitely strong feelings when it feels like there's strong feelings.
I'd like to back up what CB just said about getting out and vote, because sometimes it's a prevailing attitude that your vote doesn't matter, and that is just completely untrue in this case. Our margin last time was only something on the order of 70 votes. There's something on the order of 1,500 to 2,000 total potential votes. So a single vote in this case is statistically significant. So don't undersell the importance of just getting a single person to come out and vote.
How much support, if anyone can answer this, do you believe we get from our local newspaper down in Stevenson from the Pioneer? How much support do you think that could rally?
I personally, there hasn't been many things that the newspaper has really said other than just factual things about, I'm not even sure if they're factual. I think the little I've heard about the levy is just about taxes. That's all I've heard the newspaper talk about or read on the newspaper. But other than that, I don't think they've really come out to say anything else about this entire thing.
Do you think there's potential for, I guess, not to say maybe a rally, but for the newspaper to kind of gather up what clumps of people read the newspaper and try and, in the most non-biased way possible, because I know that's what every newspaper should lean forward, is not to be biased towards one side, but to try and maybe go pro-school for a little bit and try and help us out? Do you think that there's potential for that?
As Mr. Lacombe said to me in woodshop class, no one changes overnight. So if we wanted to get that kind of support from the newspaper, we'd just have to push and really try and get our point across for them to help us out. Because if they don't want to, then there's nothing that we can do about that except for just continue pushing.
And I think kids have a higher visibility in the community, and wearing your Bulldog swag and promoting ourselves in a positive way is going to be one of those factors. Also, informed citizens aren't going to get their information just from one newspaper.
Right.
And the culture that we live in today, most people are very connected to the digital aspect. Whether it's on your phone or Facebook or tweeting or watching things on YouTube or listening to podcasts as you are right now. And so those informed citizens are going to take more than one viewpoint when they're making that informed decision and making their vote count.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I believe last time I checked when I saw, and this kind of goes back to what Raider was saying, the margin for votes between yes and no was, I think, close 70 to 40 votes.
Only 40% of the voting population voted, and I think it was 55 votes.
55 votes, but
Is what swayed.
what do you think possibly caused so many people to not vote? Do you think it was maybe a lack of telling the community about, maybe not enough people knew that this was happening?
I like talking to adults in the community because you get so many different perspectives on what they think about the levy. And I've talked to a lot of them, and they said that this this ballot basically just got tossed under the table because there's so many more important things that they had on their plate. And then others just, they don't like the taxing situation. So there's just a big mix of things that people don't like and people do like about the levy, and it's just our job to support it.
Where does transportation fall into all this? I know that buses are a huge part of our school. I mean, it's probably maybe one of the biggest because it's the part of the day that dictates whether or not kids get home and get to school on time.
Our transportation is fully funded by the state of Washington because we have efficient routes. The one place that transportation plays into our budget is when people do the math to find out what we pay cost per student. Our average is some higher than the state of Washington's average. But when you look at the geographical area that our district covers, it makes sense that our transportation budget is larger, therefore it increases our entire average budget as well. But we get 100% back for the money we spend on transportation.
Theoretically, let's say we figure out a way to keep sports if the levy doesn't pass. Theoretically, I know, well, I don't know, but I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, that bus transportation to transport sports players to different schools is separately funded.
That is correct.
How would that take into play?
If the district is not funding sports and another group or agency is funding sports, they would have to take transportation into consideration.
So transportation, basically kids would probably have to fundraise for their own transportation and referees and things like that. Everything about a sport would have to be either fundraised or helped out by the community or sponsors. There would be no way for sports to continue if we couldn't do that.
And that would include your infrastructure in regards to utility costs for turning the lights on the football field, maintenance of the fields, all of those hidden costs.
So I think we're running out of time here. So I'd like to thank you all again, and if anyone has a last word they'd like to get into, point out, this is not only going to go as a informational piece, but we're hoping to possibly get this to go out to try and maybe persuade others to come vote yes for us. So if there's any last words people would like to get in before we end this.
Just please vote. That's all that we're asking for. Just get out and vote and support.
My job as the superintendent is to share factual information, and I have had an open door and phone line and email, and will continue to have that through August 1st for anyone that wants to fact check what they're hearing or would like some additional information. I'm open for questions. I have a levy brochure that will be put on our website probably before this podcast is broadcast. And I'll actually even be wearing a shirt throughout my summer community events that says, if you have a levy question, ask me. And I am welcoming people to approach me to find out what they need to know so they can make a vote based on facts.
All right, well, I'd like to thank you all for your time again. And this went well.